Hello, YouTube. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and welcome back to another YouTube podcast. So, today, what I'd like to explore is the connection between the runes, Vedic mantra, and Kundalini. There's a very interesting, very ancient, and rather complicated ancient historical connection, which I think very few people have been able to uncover. So, by the way, if you're new to my channel and you're not familiar with my books, I have many books out there which you can find on Amazon, and I have 3 rune books. So if you're at all interested in the runes, the history of the runes, and the various ways that you can interact and use the runes, you can go to, and I've got the link here in the chat, you can go to michaelwilliamdenney.com. Denny is Denney. And you can see all of my books, and you'll find my rune books there. And so I strongly recommend that. If you don't want to spend the very minimal amount of money to buy the books, I have an answer for that as well, which is you can go onto my channel, this YouTube channel, and you can look for me as I read my books. I read every single one of them on video, and I give editorial comments, and if my thoughts have changed over since I wrote the books, I share about that. So there's no excuse for you not to have access to my rune theories and all of that. It just takes getting up off your rear end and putting a little bit of time and effort to find them. All right, so today we're going to talk about this connection here, which I find to be extremely interesting. I mean, if I could travel back in time to be able to see what things were like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years ago, I really wish that I could. Because, we don't have any written records of a lot of these things, so we have to do some sleuthing and use our intuition and piece things together, which is what I believe I've done. So a lot of the things I'm going to share today, there's no way to prove or disprove any of it. But I believe that it makes sense, and I will be using whatever most recent scientific evidence there is to help explain some of this. So, basic assumption that I'm giving to you here is that runes and Vedic mantra are both operating from the same basic energy, which is energy we would call Kundalini. How did I come to the conclusion that runes are Kundalini? Well, because I've been doing Vedic mantra, teaching Vedic mantra for decades. And so I have a lot of personal experience with them. For years I taught Kundalini yoga, so I have an experience with stimulating and raising Kundalini, so I know what Kundalini feels like, and I know what it does. At least I have my experience of it. And of course I have my experience with the runes, chanting the runes, working with the runes in various ways. And I have come to the conclusion that the energy that the runes stimulate is strongly associated with Kundalini. Now, I want to be clear. They're not exactly the same in terms of the feel, but it's sort of like the same, as somebody said, the same fire, different flame. It's the same source, in my experience. The runes are not chi. The runes are not prana. By the way, there's a lot of people out there that don't know the difference between chi and Kundalini. In fact, there are people out there that teach things like the Kundalini awakening process, for example. And these people literally do not know the difference. And so they raise their chi, and they have a lot of powerful chi experiences, and then they'll call it Kundalini. They have no idea what Kundalini is. They're just making a guess. because the word Kundalini has this association with enlightenment, and everybody wants to feel enlightened. So whenever they have an experience, they want to say, "I raised my Kundalini," because there's this badge of honor and achieving enlightenment and all that. And the truth is that you can get sick from too much chi. You can have life force energy stuck in various places that can actually make you crazy or make you sick. So, having lots of chi energy, if it's not balanced, is not a good thing. The same is true with Kundalini. There are people that have Kundalini awakenings, and I use that word loosely, and they actually are going crazy. Their nervous system and their psyche is actually way out of balance, and they vacillate between delusions of grandeur and paranoid, visions of, being demonically attacked. And these people are nuts, So any Kundalini experience they're having is really just their nervous system out of whack. And they think they're having a Kundalini experience. And the truth is that if you have a true Kundalini experience, there's not going to be any major symptoms. You can have some symptoms, but it means that basically, it's like if you take, for instance, I've got some niacin here, which I bought when I had COVID a week or so ago. And the thing about niacin is if you take niacin and you have that flush, which I did. I took one niacin when I was sick with COVID, and my whole body just became red, and I was just like, my skin was on fire. And that was good because the niacin was actually burning through some toxins in there. You don't have a strong niacin flush experience unless you've got some toxins. So that's the same kind of thing. If you do stimulate Kundalini and you start to have these Kundalini experiences and awarenesses and, oh my God, I'm enlightened, it means actually that psychologically and perhaps energetically you have a lot of toxins, a lot of imbalance. A true Kundalini experience is going to be very pleasant, and there might not be any physical sensations whatsoever. There might not be any visions. None of that stuff is indication of a true Kundalini awakening. Kundalini is nothing more. Let's just, in case you don't know, I'll explain to you what Kundalini is. Kundalini is the fire energy that is located at the base of the spine, which is solely associated with the ego and the human psyche. Let me repeat that. Kundalini is the spiritual energy that is located at the base of the spine initially, and it is solely associated with the ego and with the psyche. When you die, your Kundalini dies with your body. Kundalini does not make you enlightened. The only thing that Kundalini will do is if it rises all the way up to the crown chakra and then turns around and goes all the way back down to the root, then you have become a complete human. It means that you have become completely mature in your interactions with other people and the world. That's it. Kundalini does not create this state of blissful, I am one with everything. If that's what's happening, it means that your Kundalini has reached the top chakra. You're only half of the way there. The other half is you come back down and you become fully human in this three-dimensional reality. And then you become simply grandma who gives out cookies to people and is very nice and lives in a functional way, has all of her feelings, and is loving and non-judgmental. That's the best you're going to get. So let me just please get rid of all of this virtue signaling garbage crap that's associated with Kundalini. That's exactly what it is. Whenever somebody says, my Kundalini was awakened, they're just virtue signaling. They're bragging. It has nothing to do with anything of any real value. Having said that, Kundalini is a necessary part of our spiritual progression, and as I said, our maturity to become a true human. We must have a mature Kundalini experience as it goes through the chakras. So, it is my experience that runes are Kundalini. In fact, my experience is that runes are even a more primal experience of Kundalini. So, having said that, let's now talk about some history. Now, if you've read my books, I talk about the Paleolithic continuity paradigm. In fact, I talk a lot about it. I'm very self-righteous about it in my books. But I was wrong. That was the best understanding that I had at that time based on the science that I was reading at that time. And there were conflicting theories, and I went with the one that met my personal agenda, which is freedom and equality and all of that. And so it lined up with that, and there seemed to be a lot of science that went along with it. But in recent years, archaeology has made it, and DNA has made it very clear that the Indo-European people started and had their genesis in the grasslands of what is now Eastern Europe. And in those grasslands of Eastern Europe, just after the Ice Ages, there was a lot of wild horses. And so they chose to live there because they hunted these wild horses. Eventually, they learned how to domesticate these horses and originally use them for meat and for milk, the same way that we now use cows for milk. They used horses for milk and meat. And then, over who knows how many thousands of years, these original Indo-Europeans, which at that time must have been a very isolated group, they figured out how to ride horses, and then they figured out how to use horses to pull chariots, and then they realized that they could be martially, they could be basically, untouchable. And so they began a military as well as a military conquest, as well as emigrating to other parts of the world, probably because there was some climate change that had something to do with that. And so these first Indo-Europeans, which were dark-eyed, dark-haired, olive-skinned people, they came into various parts of Europe and the Middle East. And then there was, what they did is they went in and either martially conquered the original indigenous hunter-gatherers of Europe, or they were assimilated either through warfare or simply because of their superior technology, farming techniques, technology, animal husbandry. The Indo-European language, culture, and religion was absorbed into what was a previous culture, which was hunter-gatherers. Now, racially speaking, there was a difference. So one of the ironic things about racists who think that Aryans are blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, the truth is that modern-day Germanic blonde-haired, blue-eyed people are actually biracial. They are the offspring of the dark-eyed, dark-haired Indo-Europeans that mated with the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, hunter-gatherer indigenous women that lived in northeastern Europe. And their children took on a lot of those traits, and so that's why you have in Europe today, you have various like me, I had jet black hair and green eyes, and you have blonde hair, blue-eyed people, and people with dark hair. My dad had olive skin. He had hazel eyes and olive skin, and he was 100% descended from English people. So This is the result of that. So that first wave of Indo-Europeans, as they came into various parts of the world and in northeastern Europe, they interbred and created this hybrid of what we would now call modern Europeans. And this hybrid created what is called the corded ware culture. And these were Indo-Europeans. And these Indo-Europeans in the corded ware culture then went back. And those people went in and became what we now know as the Vedic invaders, the Aryan invaders that went into Iran and went into eventually India. And so that's in the Vedas. Those are the people in the Vedas, because the Vedas are very clear. And I know there's a lot of there's a lot of controversy about this, and there's a lot of anti-racist, people who are responding and reacting to the racism of the British who came in with that whole nonsense. And so there's this out of India theory, which there's no archaeology, there's no DNA, there's no written history that backs that up. It's very clear that there were people who we now know are the corded ware people, who were hybrids of northeastern European hunter-gatherers and Indo-European horse warriors. They're the hybrid of that. They then went back and invaded what is now Iran and in India. And these were the Vedics. So the Vedics brought with them a very specific mythology, which you can read about. I share a lot about the pre-Hindu Vedic mythology, which is a lot of Vedic Hinduism is exactly that. Vedic Hinduism is a hybrid of the original Vedic religion that then evolved. It evolved beyond where it was, and it became what is now the Hindu religion. And so I still look to the Hindu religion as the only living representation on the planet that has a continuous connection going all the way back to its Indo-European roots. It's the only living, existing, uninterrupted Indo-European religion on the planet. And so when you look at the Vedic mythology, the mythology of, for instance, where Indra came from, and when you look at Deus Pita, which is the Sky Father, and the Earth Mother, and their offspring, which is Indra, who ended up taking over. You see all these similarities. You find similarities in the Germanic mythology, which I'm making the argument here that the runes are even older, that the runes go back before the introduction of the Indo-European religion into Europe. The runes are absolutely unique in the entire world. The similarities, let me talk about the similarities before I go any deeper than that. So the similarities between the runes and Vedic mantra. There are some similarities in that the runes, even though a lot of modern rune teachers, by the way, let me just say, as I've said in my books, many of the modern rune masters, Edred Thorson, for example, whenever you read the majority of stuff, by the way, Edred Thorson is extremely well educated, and there's a lot of very valuable information that he brings when it comes to Germanic language and the meanings of words, and some of the history is very good, but some of it is him just parroting what was the what was being taught in college when he was obviously getting his graduate degrees. And a lot of it is stuff he just simply made up. He doesn't tell you that. He doesn't tell you he's just making stuff up. For instance, he says in his books that where the runes came from. First, he goes with parroting what um, modern collegiate scholars will tell you, which is, by the way, completely unproven. It's pure conjecture. And that conjecture is, they say, well, the runes came from Germanic um, mercenaries who went down into the Mediterranean and saw the Romans and the Greeks and the all the other people there, and saw them using these primitive alphabets and using them to write and to speak. And again, there's no proof for any of this, zero proof for this, but it was the popular thing to believe that these Germanic warriors came back with this alphabet, which was from the Mediterranean, and then this alphabet, which by the way is the same alphabet that was used by the Hebrews, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, the alpha and omega, it's all the same thing. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That was the basic alphabet that was used in the Mediterranean. So according to that, they make this conjecture, which is logical but completely pure 100% conjecture. There's absolutely zero archaeological or written proof for any of it. They just assume that these uneducated Germanic warriors come back with this alphabet, which is the runes. And it is true that the runes are very simple symbols that are identical or very similar to symbols that were used in the Mediterranean alphabets. But there's one huge difference, is that, as I said, the Mediterranean alphabets, which includes the Semitic alphabets as well, is that the structure of them is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. It's the same structure, the same letter order in all of them. The runes are absolutely unique in that the Futhark you don't find anywhere. The F sound, the U sound, the TH sound, the A, the R, the K, you don't see that anywhere else in the world. There's no other alphabet in the world that uses that letter order. It's only found in the Germanic, the Futhark, the Elder Futhark. And so that causes a problem, because if these Germanic warriors were coming back from Greece and Rome, and they're coming back with this new alphabet, there would be absolutely no reason whatsoever for them to change the order of the letters. Zero. The other problem is that the Germanic, the Proto-Germanic peoples, they were not a unified nation. They weren't like Rome or Greece, where it was this unified country that followed. It wasn't. It was a bunch of loosely associated tribes that shared a basic common language and shared a basic common religion, which is the Indo-European, the ancient Indo-European religion, intermixed with whatever things came through from the pre-Indo-European hunter-gatherers, which I believe, I'm going to make the case that the runes are older, that there's something that is uniquely Germanic, that is older than the influence of the Indo-Europeans that came into Europe. And the one thing that they weren't able to change, in my opinion, was the runes. I believe the runes are older than that. So I make the case in my book that I believe that the runes go all the way back to Ice Age times. That this is something that was created uniquely, indigenously by the indigenous hunter-gatherers of that time. And that, anyway, I make that case in my book, Rune Shamanism. If you want to read that, you can. Or if you want to watch the videos of me talking about Rune Shamanism, you can. So one thing that the Vedics and the Germanics shared in common was the belief in the power of sound. They believed that sound was magical, and that to speak words was a magical thing. And so in the Vedic tradition, there is the aksharas, are the syllables. They're the syllables and consonants that make up mantra. So a true mantra master will be able to take out the aksharas, the syllables and the consonants in a word, like, just the word Rama, for example. They're able to pick that apart and tell you what the energetic significance, and in some cases, the planetary significance of each sound and each letter. Each sound and each letter, when they come together, creates an equation, a sound equation that creates a specific result. So this is why mantra is different than using positive affirmations. Positive affirmation, people sometimes mistake them, and I even say, my mantra is I never do anything I wouldn't do anyway. I do things that I would do anyway, and I turn them into money. That's my mantra. That's actually an inaccurate way of using the word mantra, but it's really mantras are sound equations. You find this also in African shamanic drumming, not drum circles. Drum circles are usually just chaos, masturbation, nonsense. But true African drumming is specific rhythms and the combination of very specific rhythms which originally were spoken chants. And those spoken chants were then translated to the drum, and then the drum ensemble, everybody's got their own specific part, and the combination of these different sound syllables coming together actually creates a vortex where the ancestors can manifest and come into the room. And when I've taught African drumming, the traditional African drumming that I learned from my teachers, as long as everybody followed their specific rhythm and followed the instructions, there would be people playing, and you'd see people looking around the room like this. And then afterwards, people go, "Did you hear that?" And I'll go, "Yeah, I heard it." "What did you hear?" "I heard somebody come through the door and walk through the class. They had bells on." "I heard children laughing." "I heard monsters screaming." So everybody was having their own experience of what happens when you do the rhythms precisely. All things happen. They come in through the veil from the other side of the spiritual realm. Mantras are the same way. Mantras are put together in a very specific way to create a sound equation, and that when you get the right equation, you get a specific result. That's why I don't recommend just going online and grabbing a mantra off the internet, because you have no idea what planet is being stimulated, you have no idea what deity, and you have no idea whether or not that planet and that deity vibrates well with your chart. You should always get a mantra from a trained Vedic astrologer who can look at, know what the aksharas are, the sound syllables, and how they vibrate with your chart, which is what we do. If you go here to courses.thunderwizard.com, you'll find astrology.thunderwizard.com, and I have I give readings as well as my certified apprentices. If you want to do that, I put the link up in the chat. You can go to lockdown.thunderwizard.com and you can learn to be a Vedic astrologer based on the system that I give, as well as become a rune reader, and I will promote you on the live stream whenever you show up and say, hey, I'm here, if you're one of my apprentices. Okay, so sorry, it's a very in-depth subject. So now the Vedics believe very strongly that the universe is made up of sound vibrations, and that mantras are not invented. Mantras are seen. So the rishis, which means the seers, the rishis who come up with these mantras, they're not creating mantras out of nowhere. They're in their shamanic trance state. They are hearing a specific mantra being chanted in the universe. And in fact, the Vedas, the Vedas were memorized, but what was happening is that the priests, way back when, they were actually taking entheogens. They were taking soma, which is the drink of Indra, after they put it under the right herbs and they put it under the moon and they chant to it and they, empower it with Indra's power. Then they would drink the soma, they would go into a trance, and then they would chant. They would chant what they were hearing going on in the universe. And these were either memorized or written down, or however they recorded it. So for instance, the mantra, one of the two oldest and most chanted mantras in existence is the Triambakam mantra, which is actually not a mantra, it's just a piece that's pulled out from one of the Vedas. Triambakam yajanmahe sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanan mrityor mukshiyam amritat. That's coming from one of the Vedas that is chanted for, I don't know, half an hour or something. It's a very long chant. It's just one little piece. So that's originally what mantras were. So what does that have to do with the runes? So mantras are Kundalini. And again, what is Kundalini? Kundalini is the energy that's found at the base of the spine originally, that has to do with the fire of ego and the fire of human psyche consciousness. It has nothing to do with anything else. So what does that have to do with runes? So if my intuition and my visions are correct about this, the runes are a verbal, oral knowledge that predate the Indo-European conquest of Europe way back 7,000 years ago. And I go into depth in my book, Rune Shamanism, exactly. I go through all of the runes and what the complete teaching that it brings. But it is my belief that these ancient pre-Germanic hunter-gatherers in northwestern Europe, they would teach, it was from father to son, and they would teach their son the power of each individual component of their language. And so whether that be a consonant or a vowel, you only have so many letters. And even today, unless we're talking about modern, some of the more modern Scandinavian languages, but Proto-Germanic, which, by the way, modern English is very close to Proto-Germanic in terms of pronunciation. Proto-Germanic only had so many syllables and so many consonants and so many vowels, which was the 3/8, the 24 letters of the Elder Futhark. Their language was only made up of that. You couldn't go beyond that. And so because language was originally shamanic magical sounds, they broke it down into what these were and put them in a very specific order. And I won't go through all of that, but Fehu, Uruj, Thurisaj, Ansuz, Raido, Kenaj, this represents an evolution in awareness that gives the warrior, the hunter, gives them the ability to interact with their physical reality and gain mastery over their physical reality. The first rune, Fehu, which means cow. So the first animal that would have been domesticated would have been the cow. And that was originally, that before they had that, and I believe that Fehu was the last rune that was put into the Elder Futhark. Because before that, you had hunter-gatherers, especially in Ice Age times, you had these hunter-gatherers. And so the first and most powerful experience they have wouldn't have been Fehu, it would have been Uruj. So Fehu is domesticated Uruj. Uruj is the oryx. And as you know, the modern cow is actually a descendant of the wild buffalo of Europe, the wild bison of Europe, which was called the oryx, which I think they were something crazy. I mean, they were just huge. They were incredibly fierce. And the Uruj, that upside down U is actually the horns of the oryx coming at you as it's charging at you. That's what you see coming at you, is that. So it has everything to do with power. And that was for Ice Age hunters, that would have been the ultimate game. And you would have had to go out with all of your tribe, and everybody would have had to work together to take down just one of these immense, very ferocious, very powerful creatures. But from that, you could get meat, you could get bone, you could get sinew, you could get skins, you could use the entire body of the oryx to give you everything that you needed. It was the Walmart of ancient times. Was taking down one oryx, you were good to go. So that would have been the first rune, was oryx. Uruj, Thurisaj, Ansuj, Raito. I go into depth in the book explaining how that progression actually creates conscious mastery and awareness. So I believe that the reason why, when the first Indo-Europeans came into Europe and either conquered or merged with the existing hunter-gatherers there, that those people took the Indo-European language and they would have spoken it with an accent. So when you read Proto-Germanic and you read Vedic, the original Vedic language, Sanskrit, it's pronounced very differently, but they're the same words. For example, the word Fehu. Fehu is a Germanic pronunciation of the Indo-European Pashu. Fehu, Pashu. It's the same word. One of the names for Shiva is Pashupati. which means the lord of the cow, the pati of the pashu, the lord of the cow, Pashupati. And there's no shortage of other words. I mean, I trained in classical languages when I was in college, so I learned classical Greek, I learned classical Latin, I learned a little bit of Sanskrit. And when you look at Old English, for example, all you have to do is look at Old English, but especially if you look at Proto-Germanic, you can see that it's the exact same language, but it's pronounced differently. That's it. It's the only difference. So in terms of the Vedic gods and the Germanic gods, for instance, I'll give you an example. The goddess Freja is just simply the Germanic pronunciation of the ancient Vedic, the Sanskrit, which is Praja. It's the exact same word. Freja, Praja. One has a Germanic accent to it. So so let's go back however many 7,000 years or however long ago it was. These first Indo-Europeans come in and they're speaking, what would have been the Proto-Sanskrit. They're speaking whatever that first Indo-European language is. And these Germanic, Proto-Germanic, even Proto-Proto-Germanic, these original non-Indo-European, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, these hunter-gatherers, they would have heard somebody pronounce the word a goddess, the goddess of fertility. She would have been called Praja. They would have heard Praja and they would have pronounced it with their accent, and Praja would have come out Freja. So the same thing with Fre. Fre is the Germanic pronunciation of the Sanskrit pra, which means expansion, which is where we get fertility. Pra, fur, pra, fur. It's the same thing, fertility. We could do that with Indra and Thunar. We could do that with all kinds of different words and names. And if you know how to decode the language, you can see that the Proto-Germanic language is a hybrid. It is a completely 100% Indo-European language that has an original accent that's being attached to it. And so the similarity is that these two originally unrelated people, these blonde-haired, blue-eyed, more primitive hunter-gatherers, they are overtaken by these Indo-European horse warriors that bring their language and their religion and their culture and their technology. And this becomes completely adopted by the indigenous hunter-gatherers there. They adopt their language. This happens all the time. It happens, you've got you've got all kinds of pidgin English language where you have English settlers have come in and the indigenous people end up speaking a form of English, but it's slightly different. Same thing would have been true about them. So they get rid of all the things that don't work. So they get rid of all of their, they no longer need to be hunter-gatherers because now they've been given this new technology. These people have brought the wheel, they brought the wagon, they brought the horse, they've brought domestication of animals. So this is a far superior way to live than just being a hunter-gatherer. And so they adopt, same way like Native Americans. They didn't adopt a whole hell of a lot, but horses, they absolutely adopted and mastered that. And so, we don't even remember. When we think about Native Americans, we think of these masters of horse riding, but they didn't. When the first Europeans showed up, Native Americans walked around. They didn't have anything to ride. But that, for them, was technology that was far superior, that made their life much better, so they adopted that. So in terms of the original inhabitants of Europe, the pre-Indo-European hunter-gatherers that were there, they got rid of a lot. Clearly, their whole language was taken over. Their whole way of life was taken over. They became Indo-European in every way, except for one. In the case of the Germanic people, except for one, which was the runes. They held on to that. They held on to it because it had the same belief structure that the Indo-Europeans would have had, which is the belief that sound is magical. In fact, the word to spell, like when you spell out a word, right? To spell a word, what does that mean? It means that when you spell out a word, you are creating a spell. Your words have magical ability. We've lost that belief and that understanding. In fact, we talk about curse words. There was a time when if you cursed somebody, it was believed that that had power. And you didn't do that. One of the greatest series that came on was the series Rome. Whoever did the research for that did a very good job. And one of the things in it is that when you see people speak, like especially if they speak out in public, they use mudras. They use all kinds of mudras. In fact, this was taken from, when you see heavy metal, that was taken from ancient Roman mudras. This one is getting rid of the evil eye. But when they spoke, they would do things like this. In fact, you see ancient paintings from the early Christian period, and you see Jesus with this mudra. This is an ancient Indo-European understanding. And even now today, we go, everything is okay. That's a mudra. The reason why we throw the middle finger at people when we're cursing them is because this is the finger of Saturn. This is the finger of judgment, of karma. When you're flipping somebody the bird, you're really cursing them that Saturn will bring down karma on them. So we still have this. This is ancient Indo-European understanding. So what else was I going to say? So anyway, those are some of the basic things, but my experience is exactly what we would have expected. When I chant the runes, when I work with the runes, I feel a incredibly powerful base structure of the fire that has created the universe. We might even say unrefined, although that's not exactly accurate. The level of power that I feel chanting the runes and the level of influence that it has on my transformation and my interaction with the objective universe is so powerful that I almost never chant runes. Now that's just me. Some people are different than me. I don't know what it is about me, but if I talk about a specific rune, like when you go and if you go to lockdown.thunderwizard.com, or if you just go onto my free YouTube site and you watch those videos that I've made where I talk about the runes, each video that I made about each specific rune, that rune then took over my entire life, and it was very unpleasant because the level of transformation was very challenging. So I never mess around with the runes. That's why I don't have any rune tattoos. I have so much respect for them. I don't just flaunt them around like they're meaningless. And that is a very Indo-European belief that the universe is created from sound. And this is also a Germanic belief. In fact, the giant, one of the primordial giants at the beginning of the creation of the world, when you translate his name, it means he who yells, meaning he's yelling, he's speaking the universe into existence. One of the first primordial beings that ever, in the Germanic tradition that ever first came into existence. So my experience with mantra is exactly what you would expect, because what I've found is that the Germanic mythology represents an earlier, more primitive Indo-European mythology of the cosmos. Because, as I've just showed you, going back to Frey and Freyja, which is in Germanic is Frey and Freyja. The Sanskrit is pra and praja. But the Vedic god of fertility, you don't have the Vedic god of fertility split up into two deities, masculine and feminine. Because also Frey and Freyja are simultaneously brother and sister and husband and wife, which means they're the same energy. One is masculine, one is feminine. You have a god and a goddess of fertility. One is named Frey, the other is Freyja. Frey is the power of fertility. Freyja is the Shaktified. Whenever you bring Shakti or feminine power, it expands it. So you have this expansion of the power of fertility, pra, and then you add the feminine power to it, which expands it, and it becomes praja. And so you don't have this in the Vedic tradition. You have one god whose name is Prajapati. Prajapati. Prajapati means the lord of the feminine power of pra. So that was the one god that they focused on for fertility, which shows you're taking a more primitive understanding of the universe, and now you see in the Vedic, you have a more complex, a more evolved. It's evolved into something more complex. Whereas you go back in time, which would have been exactly what we now know to be true, is that the corded were people, which were the direct descendants of the merging of the original Indo-Europeans, horse warriors, and the indigenous blonde-haired, blue-eyed hunter-gatherers. The merging of that created the corded were people. The corded were people then went, and those were the people who went into India. And those were the people that brought the Vedas with them, and they brought the Vedic religion. And so you can see that there's a linear progression from Germanic, Indo-European to Vedic. Okay? So that's my general lecture on that today. Again, I can't prove the majority of this, but I think that the language bears it out. And the runes and mantra science, I think, bears this out also. I'm happy to take questions. You know how this works. If you have a question, you write the word question in all caps, and then you ask your question. I'm only looking for honest questions and honest feelings. If you do anything other than that, more than likely I'm going to have a response that you may not like. Vincent.thunderwizard.com says hello, and as I've said, he is one of my certified Vedic astrologers. You can go to his website, vincent.thunderwizard.com. If you want me to give you a website with your name. And if you want me to promote you on live streams, if you come on, you can go to lockdown.thunderwizard.com, and you can, if you pass those very simple tests, I will be more than happy to give you your own website and promote you, and you'll have your own business. You can ask Vincent. He's completely 100% in control of that. If he gets a reading because I've promoted him, then it's on his. I don't know anything about it, and then he sends me a small token just because I'm promoting him. But other than that, he's completely in control. If you want to have your own business, you can do the same thing. Jameson-san, honest feeling. With Kundalini practice, I feel the impact of my past. Weak right side, base 3 and 5th. I guess he's talking about chakras there. I feel impatient and angry, being told with time it will improve. Sensitivity will come as you work. So I understand and appreciate your feeling, and as always, I can't have any comment on a feeling. A feeling is a feeling. So I understand and relate to a lot of that. Vincent.thunderwizard.com question: is there a way to restore memory lost due to early childhood trauma? My memory is terrible and I'm scared it'll get worse. No, it's not going to get worse. It's going to get better. The more that you continue to do I'm assuming you're doing the Warrior 90-day stuff, or whatever, energy practice that you're doing, your mantra. The more that you do that, and the more that, in your case, working with a therapist, your memory will come back. You don't have access to it because it's just too painful and overwhelming, and that's a normal human defense mechanism, because if you were to have all of your unconscious memories and feelings, it would be too overwhelming. So it's okay. You take a little bit at a time. It's like when you cleanse yourself. If you take cleansing herbs and you take too many, it'll make you sick, because there's too much toxins coming out at one time. So it's good to take these things slowly. And so same thing with your memory. Your memory will come back. The more that you continue to heal, you'll make more room, and more memories will come up. You'll process them, you'll let them go. And this will be a lifetime thing, unfortunately. I'm sorry to tell you. I've been doing this for, however long I've been doing it, and I'm still learning and growing. I just met with my group last night, and it was painful. They pointed out some stuff in me and in my interactions, and it wasn't fun, but every time I do it, I learn and grow a little bit. Jameson-san question: how can I distinguish between a desire for a shortcut and wanting to do everything to heal, i.e. focused rune work plus the 4 things? Can rune chanting be more ad hoc than mantra? So again, Jameson, we've got the same theme, which is you just criticize yourself no matter what you do. You're so hard on yourself. I don't know why you need to distinguish between any of it. Listen to your instincts and do what feels right. If you find something that works, if it works, don't fix it. It's normal. Like, for instance, if for a lot of people, they go train with a Qigong master, and the Qigong master gives them something seemingly very basic and simple, and the student I see that other guy doing something more complicated. I want to do that. But they don't realize that what they're doing is working for them and feels good to them. It's their head that tells them they need something better. Grass is always greener. So I don't know how to answer your question. I don't even know that you need to distinguish between any of it. Stop judging it. Just do what feels good and do what works. And if it works, don't fix it. And just know the meditation for you is that you're constantly criticizing and judging yourself. And that's the meditation, is just to be in whatever you're doing and let yourself have all that self-directed negativity, and know that it's got nothing to do with objective reality, and to love yourself. The more that you can love yourself and your negative feelings, the more you'll learn to just be comfortable listening to your instinct and just doing whatever that leads you towards. And maybe kind of imagine, what would somebody do if they weren't, what would somebody who wasn't self-critical, what would they do in this situation? And then see if there's a difference. Go, okay, they probably wouldn't be trying to they would probably be comfortable just doing what they're doing and appreciating what they have, right? Just as an example. Magic Song question. Have you analyzed or have in your books a direct relationship between matrikas, aksharas, and the runes? And also, what do you think about the need of diksha? Was there a runic diksha? So my first answer to your question is, if you read the books, you'll find out. So why aren't you just reading the books? And again, you don't even have to buy them. I read the books on the channel. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse for anybody listening to me now to not have at least read or listened to me read my books on runes. So you can do that. You don't have to ask me. You can find out yourself exactly what I teach in terms of the direct relationship. What do I think about the need of diksha? By diksha, you mean energy transmission? I'm not sure I know what that word means. Let me look it up just to be sure that we're on the same page. Diksha. There's some weird platform. It's not telling me what it is. Diksha. Translated as preparation or consecration for a religious ceremony. Is giving of a mantra or initiation by the guru. Yeah, okay. So, what is my feeling about that? I mean, that's been the case in every single spiritual tradition in some way or other. You know, I'm teaching these Maoshan 5-element practices, and there's a transmission just by watching me do it and following me do it. There's a transmission that happens there. There's a transmission anytime anybody works with me in any way. You know, that's just the nature of teacher-student relations. If somebody works with me in person doing the 5-element, when I demonstrate on them the energy, I will transmit energy into them, which will be diksha. So what is the importance? I mean, you can't separate it. Whether it's done in a ritual fashion or not, you know, each tradition is a little bit different. But in terms of the importance of it, you can't get away from it. Just to give you an example, I remember I had a student years and years ago when I was in Idaho, and I wasn't even thinking about it, but I went and I just touched the top of her head. I don't even remember why I did it. It wasn't anything like I was doing anything, but as soon as my hand came towards the top of her head, she said, "What the hell did you just do?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You put your hand over my head and I felt this huge energy thing." You know, I was like, "Oh, wow. Oh, well, okay. Great." That it's just something that happens. So I don't know what else to say about that. I've had numerous experiences where I've had that from my teachers. I've done it. It's happened through me sometimes when I'm not even aware of it. It's just something that happens. You know. So what is the importance of it? If you have a real teacher, you will have that experience in some way. This is why people put pictures of their gurus on their altar. It's not because the guru is God, even though they may think so. It's just that the guru is they've chosen that teacher, and that is a karmic thing, which means that teacher has a karmic debt to repay to the student. And the way they do that is by channeling their higher selves. So the teacher is merely the representation of the student's higher self. By looking up to the teacher is the symbol. They're actually looking to their own higher self. and they're getting that diksha. So one person can say that diksha is coming from their own higher self, and that the teacher is just simply the conduit, the symbol that releases that connection with their own higher self. Was there a runic diksha? Obviously there was. I mean, like I said, you can't have a student-teacher relationship without some kind of diksha. And if, when people hear me chant the runes, as I come on to here every now and then, and lately I've been doing more of it, where I will chant a rune 108 times. Listening to me chant it, I'm chanting it. I have a very specific pronunciation that I believe has come from the ancestors. I pronounce the Z in the end of runes very precisely, and I do that because that's the way I heard it. When I was first learning the runes and went into meditation and had visions, I heard them chanting it a very specific way. So I teach that very specific way. Whenever you hear me chant the runes or even speak a rune, you're hearing that. That is a diksha. All right, magic song question. Am ang ansuj im lim isa. So what, are you asking about the connection? There's obviously a connection. I'll give you one example. The seed sound for Indra, which, by the way, before there was Om, which is pronounced O-N-G, before there was Om, there was Ing. And Ing, nowadays everybody, if there's one seed sound, Vedic seed sound, it's Om. But before that it was Ing. And Ing was seen as Shakti. It was seen as, in fact it is, it's very powerful Shakti mantra. It is the seed sound for, obviously, for Indra. The seed sound for Indra is Ing. What is the rune for the internal fire? Ing. What happens when you chant the Vedic Ing sound? You stimulate Kundalini. The Vedic word Agni, the Greek and Roman ignis, these are actually altered pronunciations of the original Indo-European word for the spiritual fire, which was pronounced ink. And what do you see in the runes? You have ing. So you're trying to make these connections between the runes and the aksharas. I believe that they're there. If this is a science, which I believe that it is, meaning a science is a body of knowledge that exists objectively. In other words, I do not believe that the runes are some cultural peculiarity like many of the New Age, especially the tribalist, neo heathens. Again, using that word heathen is ridiculous when you understand what the word heathen means. So neo heathens, they do it because it promotes their racial culture and all that sort of ridiculous nonsense, which again, if you understand the original people, the original corded ware people, who are probably one of the earliest, if not the earliest, Proto-Germanic and Proto-Indo-European people, these people were hybrids. They were racial, they were mutts. There was no such thing as any pure racial anything. It didn't exist. So that whole idea of racial purity is nonsense, because they don't realize that even if you go back to the original, at what point in time do you have, the first racial anything? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Even if you were to find that, you would find a hybrid. You would find a mutt. You would find what do they call that? You would find a half-breed. So that whole racial stuff is complete nonsense. We know for a fact that blonde-haired, blue-eyed, not that I'm one of those, but blonde-haired, blue-eyed um, uh, Europeans, if you go back far enough, you're going to find a dark-skinned, dark-eyed, curly-haired African. It's just the facts. There isn't one point in time where anything is set in stone. Everything is always moving and changing continuously. That's why you can have so many different people around the world that have so many different ethnicities but speak the same language. For instance, when people are speaking Hindi and speaking English, they're speaking the same language. They're very far removed and they're not mutually intelligible at all anymore, but they're the same language. You see it with French. You know, French is just a bastardization of Latin. French is nothing more than Germanic barbarians trying their best to speak Latin, and they can't do it. It's just a really crappy, horrific, destructively bastardized version of Latin. But French people are just so into their language, and it's really just, you know, if one of the original speakers of Latin were to hear a French person speak, they would say, what a barbarian. He is just destroying the language. I can't even understand it. What the hell's wrong with him? Anyway, what else? Magic song, honest feeling. I deeply admire your knowledge of the runes, and also I really love the explanation about Fehu being added later. We'll buy your book for sure. Good. Thank you for that. I'm glad that it was helpful for you. Adam, question. Adam, you were on here yesterday. You didn't pay attention. The two most important things in life, if you ever learn anything from me, here they are. To pay attention and put effort. If you do those two things, you can be guaranteed success in life. I was very clear with you. Yesterday I said when you write the word question, as you see above you, you write the word question in all caps. Why? So that I will see it, so that I will be able to answer your question. I almost passed by it. The whole point of you asking me the question is to get my attention. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to follow my direction so that I can best serve you. All right? So let's see. You didn't hear what I said last time. I was very clear. I told you that I do not believe in Christianity, and there's no reason for me to even repeat anything that Christians teach because I believe it to be a destructive, horrific religion. So you didn't pay attention on two counts. You didn't write the word question in all caps as I have asked you to do. And you didn't hear me when I told you I'm not even going to bother answering any questions about Christianity. So what is the problem? I mean, is there a plate on your forehead? Why do you insist on, making the same mistake over and over again? Okay, I'm not going to read your question. You asked me that question yesterday and I answered it. It was the exact same question. I'm not even going to bother reading it. I already answered it. If you don't remember, go back and watch the video from last week where I answered your question. And I said the exact same thing to you then as I'm telling you now. Please write the word question in all caps. And please don't ask me anything about what Christians think, because I could care less. Christianity is a false, destructive religion, and there's no need for me to even bring up anything they say. I don't teach anything Christian. Why would you ask me a question like that? Do you think you can get it this time? Next time you won't ask me the same question and make the same mistakes? Do you think you can pay attention and put effort? We'll see. What else? I don't see any other questions. There's a couple of spam things that I got to get rid of here. Again, there must be some bots that spam. Come on. Oh, yeah. All right. So, and then this one, that's spam as well. There, we get rid of both of those guys. I don't see any other questions. You got 35 people on here, so I'll do a little bit of business. So, if you scroll up to the top of the chat, you're going to see you'll see two links. First one is lockdown.thunderwizard.com. So lockdown.thunderwizard.com. If you go there, you can learn and get a tremendous discount on a huge number of teachings that I have. I mean, I don't know how much you save, like a couple $1,000 or something like that. And you can learn my version of Vedic astrology, which you can become certified in, and you can start your own Vedic astrology business. And as I said, when you come on here, I will promote you. I won't guarantee that, anything I do will bring anything for you. You'll still be 100% responsible for your own business. But at least, if you're looking for something, there's that. And you can do rune reading as well. I can give you certification on that, and I'll give you your own website. And then you see michaelwilliamdenny.com. That is my website that takes you directly to Amazon, and you see all of my books. People are forgetting that I've written all these books on all kinds of things, but all three of my rune books are there, and you can get them. And I do think it's good to have them in physical form, so you can go and have them as a resource. But as I said, you can also just watch the videos on here for free where I read it. I don't write any of those books with the intention of making money. The books are cheap. I don't know why people wouldn't buy them. So there's that. And then, of course, we have maushan.thunderwizard.com. So if you go there, I am just about to upload the fifth and final element, which is the earth element. And I'm waiting a few days because I want to give people time. Because you still have the chance to get all 5 elements for a discount if you want to save yourself a couple $100. I don't know exactly what the savings is. I don't remember, but I think it's at least a couple $100. You can save yourself some money, and then in a few days I'm going to upload the earth element, and then all 5 elements will be there, and then the price will go up to its normal full price, and it will stay there. So I'm just letting you know about that. In connection with that, if you're doing this, but even if you're not, I recommend that everybody go here, thunderwizard.com. Scroll around until you see Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. That will give you access to everything on my Patreon channel, including the Shamanism series, which includes runes and rituals and mantra and energy work and all kinds of other great stuff, as well as the Manifestation Mastery course, so you can know how to stimulate the universe to give you everything that you want. If you understand the universe is like, it's like a vending machine. If you know what buttons to push, you can get the universe to give you exactly what your soul truly wants. And then, of course, you'll have access to the Maushan University, I'm calling it, which is the Lightning Qigong. And the combination of the Maushan and the Lightning Qigong is the complete Maushan tradition as I'm teaching it. And there's more coming all the time. But this is my highest level of teaching, my highest level of energy. And if you're watching this channel, listening to me talk is about 1%. What you really need if you want to gain what I have to teach is to do the work, do the energy work. I don't care if you're doing the free Qigong that I have on the channel, or if you're doing the Celestial Qigong, or if you're doing the Maushan I don't care what it is, whether you're paying for it or not. Do the Hool breath, do the energy work. That's what's going to make the shift. This is a universe of action. It's not a universe of thought. I know that's what you've been told. But your thoughts shift as a result of your actions, not the other way around. Your actions do not shift because of your thoughts. Your thoughts shift because of your actions. Your neural pathways change not because of how you think, but because of what you do. When you do something different consistently in your life, your neural pathways change. This is the route of healing. This is the route of enlightenment. And the way to do that is to take action. And the most powerful action that you can take to shift your body is to do this, all of this energy work. So if you're new to the channel, free, paid, just do the work. And then you'll know a lot of what I'm talking about. You won't have to ask the majority of your questions. You probably won't even have to ask. Having said that, I'll double check, see if anybody said anything. Atham Animist Questine, do you have any experience with the OM script? No. All right. Is that it? That's it. No more questions. All right. Thank you, everybody. I wish you all the best. Stay safe and stay healthy. If you haven't already gotten COVID, I just got over it a week ago. And I'm happy to say I'm completely 100% recovered. And I'm very happy about that. And according to the CDC, so YouTube can't shut me down for this. According to the CDC, the most powerful protection against COVID is having had it and recovered. And that is, and that whether you're vaccinated or not, vaccination has zero impact on your protection against COVID if you've already had COVID and recovered. That's from the CDC. So we're also being told that everybody's going to get the Omicron variant, and which is good because if you get it, you basically will be fully vaccinated, as completely protected as is humanly possible. So if you want to protect yourself from the Omicron variant, my suggestion is to go to COVID19criticalcare.com. That's COVID and then the numbers 19criticalcare.com, and go and click around and find out what to do to prevent yourself from getting COVID. If you get COVID, it tells you all of the prescriptions and the vitamins and the other stuff that you can take while you have COVID. I had COVID and I didn't have any of the really nasty symptoms. I did not have a sore throat. I did not have a cough. I did have a fever and I did have the fatigue, but I know, in fact, I know somebody in California who's got COVID right now, and they're coughing so much that they've, thrown out a rib and they've got a muscle spasm, and it's incredibly painful. And I didn't have any of that. So if you want to avoid that, my suggestion is to go to COVID19criticalcare.com and follow their suggestions. These are coming from doctors who treat COVID patients and have been treating COVID patients for over 2 years. All right, and with tremendous success. All right, so let's see, what else do we got? Did any other questions come up since then? No questions. All right, so that's it. I wish you guys all the best, and take care of yourself, stay safe, and I will see you guys all next time.